Welcome to the Unleash Your Power podcast. I'm your host, Anastasia Jones, creativity mentor, author, and limiting belief gladiator. My purpose is to help you transcend fear, take bold, aligned action, and co-create the life and business of your wildest dreams. The world needs your art now more than ever. And if you're ready to embody the creative force within you, then you're in the right place. Now is the time to make your mark. Now is the time to unleash your power. Welcome back to the pod, my loves. I am so happy that you're here. It has been quite a few weeks since I've released a new episode. And it's so funny because I have a number of really incredible episodes in the queue, and it just hasn't felt aligned to release them all yet. And so I've just, listened to my intuitive nudge and just allowed myself to take a rest, take a break, and reassess some things, which I'm going to go into later on in this episode. Usually for podcast episodes, I make an outline, I have a topic, I have bullet points, I have calls to action to inspire you to take aligned action, whatever that looks like in your life, in your art. This episode is really, truly seconds ago, I just typed up a few things that I think I want to talk about, but who knows? It could go in any sort of direction. My ultimate intention, though, with this podcast episode is just to catch up, to tell you kind of what's been on my mind and my heart, and who knows, maybe some of the things I've been feeling and navigating and thinking about and journaling through and feeling into, perhaps they resonate with you. And that really is the goal. That's the intention, is that you feel seen, you feel like you're not alone, you feel like you are heard in one way or another, and also ultimately you feel just a little bit braver to take whatever that action is that you feel on your heart to take. So we'll see. I am sitting at my desk up in the loft of my apartment, located squarely underneath a huge, I don't know what they call this, but it's like a window in the roof. It doesn't open or anything, but it just lets in some beautiful light. And I get to look up at these massive trees that have been on this earth way longer than I've been alive or even been a thought. A sparkle in my parents' eye before that. These trees were out here. So it's cool looking up and seeing the sky and the trees. And it's gray today. It's so gray. It's so pretty. I'm the kind of person that loves rainy days. It just kind of it's a different filter through which I can see the world and get to experience nature, the rain, all the things. So that's been really, really great for me. Excuse me. So yeah, let's just I'll start with talking about some of the things that I've been learning and the lessons and the thoughts that have been on my heart and mind. Okay, so my word of the year this year is receive. And I received that word sometime in December. And I was like, okay, this is exciting and I don't know what to expect. And every time I have a word of the year, I leave space for it to reveal itself to me in so many different ways. And I create a note on my phone titled My Word of the Year. And throughout the year, I add different, perspectives, expressions, different ways of looking at that word that I feel like God, the universe is showing me and teaching me. So there are a few here. It's like receive, right? We think receive, it means like someone gives us something and we take it. But I'm really kind of learning that this word is so complex and there's so much depth to it, so many different ways of looking at it. There's, receiving in terms of receiving messages from your intuition, right? Like, what do you do when something presents itself, a lesson presents itself in your life, or a new awareness, a new perspective? How do you receive that? What do you do with that information? Do you just receive it and then let it go? Do you think about it? Do you process through it? So what is that like for you to receive those messages from your intuition and from just even in the small moments? Maybe you see something seemingly insignificant happen, but for some reason it lands with you a different way and it teaches you something. Oftentimes, unbeknownst to anyone, you're receiving this lesson and it's making itself available for you. So what's that like? Receiving love, right? Like, what is it like for you to receive love in all of its different forms, to receive care from someone, help from someone, to receive the love that you feel maybe when you're in a community or in fellowship, right? To receive in those moments. What does it look like for you to receive joy, right? Like, do you allow yourself to receive, specifically, I have in my note, receiving big joy, the kind of joy that no one or nothing can take away, the kind of joy that is within you. Do you allow yourself to receive unlimited, infinite amounts of joy, or do you find yourself putting like a limit to how much joy you can receive? Maybe you receive this joy and this love and you're like, oh, but that's too much. That's too much. And maybe the deeper dialogue there for you is like, you feel you're not worthy of that. So when you feel like you're not worthy of it, then you stunt it. Do you find yourself doing that? What is it like, receiving lessons from nature? This has been a big one for me. I mean, every single time I step outside, I love nature. I love the woods. As a kid, I would play in the woods a lot with my brother, my friends, but also just alone. I would just go outside and, explore and find different rocks to turn over and different flowers and plants and just be in the woods surrounded by nature. That was very much my vibe as a kid. And so it's cool reconnecting with that in the same woods that raised me, New England, the New England forest. So what is that like for you when you're in nature and you see a bird fly by and you receive this lesson that's like, oh, like, that type of freedom it feels so true for me. Like, how can I embody that type of freedom and flow in my life? Or maybe, like for me, yesterday, I just saw, I walked down by the water and I saw this sweet little scene of like there were two schools, is that the right word? Two families of ducks or geese. I don't know the difference. I think they were geese. They were bigger. And there was like one big goose at the front of the line, one big goose at the end of the line. And then in the middle were all these little duckies. It was the cutest thing ever. But there were two families swimming side by side with each other. And I just thought to myself, like, isn't that how life is? Like, we're all just little duckies floating along, and before us, in front of us, there is this source of unconditional love guiding us, guiding the way. Behind us, there is this source of unconditional love who's got our back at all times, right? And then we just get to receive and float along and soak everything up. And we don't have to worry. We don't have to fear. We don't have to make things complicated. We just can know that, like, there is this source of unconditional love that's has our highest good in mind and is there for us, with us at all times, even though we may not even compute or sense or perceive that it is there. It doesn't change that those things are ever present in our human experience. And so, but that was a lesson that I just received, a truth that I received just by going and standing by the water, you know? I mean, I was there for maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and I don't know, it was so beautiful. So receiving lessons from nature, right? So yeah, what does it look like for you to receive in every area of your life? What does it look like for you to receive infinitely without self-sabotaging, without blocking it, just allowing you to feel that grace upon grace upon grace in your life with no limit and no end? What's that like for you? So receive, my word of the year. And recently, I mean, like the last 2 weeks, I had this realization like, okay, my word of the year is receive. And like, I could name so many instances just in the first 6 months of this year where I have released so many things in my life. Like, just one example is the move that I made from California to Maine. And knowing that there was more joy available for me in this move to Maine, and still being in California and being like, at one point I walked into my apartment when I first got back to California, because prior to, I had a 3-month trip. It was supposed to be 1 month, and then it turned into 3 in New England. I just couldn't leave. I didn't want to leave. So when I did leave and I got back to California, it was so interesting how this happened. Like, I viewed all of my possessions in my apartment, and I had this feeling of like, I could walk out my front door right now with nothing but 10 things and feel fine. I was so ready to level up. I was so ready to embrace what I knew was available for me, that I started feeling like this detachment from the things that I own, and not in a way that's like apathetic. It was more so like, I don't know, maybe you felt this in your life. Maybe you know exactly what I mean, but it felt like a gift. It felt like something loving was like, yeah, I'll help you here. I'll help you feel like you really can release all of these things, because what's available for you, what you desire, is there and it can be yours. So I'm going to help you by making it easier for you to release all of these things. Now, these were all things that at one point I really, really wanted. Like, I wanted my couch. I wanted my that specific mattress. I wanted my rugs and my decorations and my plants, like my desk. I loved my desk. I wanted it so bad. These were all things that I wanted, and I got them and I had them and I loved them. And then it was so interesting that I suddenly went back to that same apartment and was like, I can lovingly detach from all of these things right now. And so that's what I did. I sold everything, truly. And I packed up my car. I have a Mazda 3, my baby, Cece. And I packed her up with whatever I wanted to keep that I put in the car. And I shipped her to Maine. And everything else I sold, I donated, or I threw away. And it was a much easier, simpler process than I ever thought it would be. It was so easy for me to release these things. And I know that I had to release these things in order to receive what I really, really wanted. And that pattern of releasing has been the theme of this year. Even though my word has been receive, I have released so many possessions. I've released clients. I've finished and released projects. I have released even relationships, so many relationships. And all with that same loving detachment. Like, I'm so grateful for this experience, for these lessons, for this season. And it's time for me to move forward and to release. And so I just was thinking about that last couple of weeks. I'm like, oh my God, for my word of the year to be received, it is incredible the amount that I have released this year. And now I'm thinking that those two words are more similar than they are different. More similar than they are different than I ever thought they'd be. And there is this theme of like, in order to receive, we must release and create space and create margin in our life. But what happens in the in-between of releasing and receiving is that's what I've been navigating the last few months. And so many lessons, so many my journal. I mean, I've had at least 2 different journals since I moved to now. And it's all because I'm just processing through these things. And my journal has always, always, always been a really safe space for me to speak so authentically, to allow myself to process. And it's been really powerful, really healing. And it's also been hard, you guys. It's also been really hard. I mean, there are moments that I experience of this, I want to call it loneliness, because I know that there's a difference between loneliness and solitude. And I can go into that in another episode, just my thoughts around that. But there is this sense of like, okay, all of this releasing and creating space, which is so necessary to receiving, but that space, it feels so uncomfortable. It feels so foreign. It feels like the rub is what I call the rub. It feels crunchy sometimes. It's like, okay, well, like, wow. The way that I was moving in the world is different now. And so it's allowed me to do the space to do some real reassessing. And I've been asking myself, the dreams and the intentions and the goals that I have for my life, like, are those things I really want? Or are those things I really want now? Because maybe at one time I really, really wanted them. I know at one time I really wanted them, but now, do I want those things? Has the vision for my life changed? Have my values changed? I feel like a completely different person, and I also feel like myself. Can that be true? Right? So like, these are all things that I'm working through, and I just feel so open. I feel so open and just available to see things differently. And it kind of feels like, okay, how about this? Here's a great analogy. It's like when you're driving in your car and you're driving for a long period of time, and over time, your windshield gets foggy. It gets dirty. It's, you got like maybe some bug guts on it. Maybe you've got some dirt, some pollen, a lot of pollen this spring, okay? Maybe you've got whatever it might be. And at some point, you've got to clean the windshield. You got to press that little, lever, let all the windshield washer fluid get on your windshield. The wipers go back and forth, and then it cleans things, and you're like, oh, wow. First of all, I didn't even realize it was that dirty or that like fogged up. I didn't even realize I was seeing through a lens that wasn't clean. But then you clean it and you're like, oh, wow, great. I can see even better. I feel even safer, right? It's like, that's as close as I can get to it. it's allowing, I can say this. I am allowing myself to see and perceive differently in this season, and allowing myself to grow and in this season. And there was an element of like, and I think we all need to do this, where I caught myself. I was so excited about the move, and everything is moving so fast. And I got here, jumped right into my community, jumped right into, nesting and meeting new people and going to networking events, and like really desiring to build a even stronger community here in New England, because I'm building roots. I know I'm going to be here for a long time. And so I just didn't allow myself the space to look back and be so thankful and really close out the season that I had experienced. So I did that the last few weeks, and I'm like, first of all, thank you to myself. Thank you, self. Thank you, God, for allowing me to experience those 2.5 years in California. It was so expansive for me. I loved that I took that risk. I mean, I loved that I met people that I consider lifetime friends. I loved what my business turned into when I moved to California. I mean, who I became. I loved the lessons that I learned. They were beautiful and hard and helpful, and I grew so much. And so the last few weeks, I've really just allowed myself the space to look on that last season with gratitude, because toward the end of that season, I did feel an immense amount of frustration. I was like, I don't want to be here. I felt like antsy, like I don't want to be here. I need to go. Like I need to move. I love Maine. I need to go back. Like, what am I doing here? What am I still doing here? I feel stuck. I feel stagnant. And like that also was true for me. However, after being here and jumping into things, I realized I didn't look back with gratitude and love. And I didn't really honor that season for what it was. And so I allowed myself to do that. And that was so healing for me. So if you're listening to this and you feel yourself, moving into a new level, a different season, a new dynamic, right? Like leveling up in all these areas of your life, you can do that without beating yourself up for the prior season. You can do that and look back on the past version of you and just be so grateful to them. Be so grateful that they got you here, because that is the truth. You wouldn't be here without having been there. So that gratitude was really healing for me. And it was hard. There were moments where I cried. I mean, I cried with, it's probably the stages of grief. It's probably that. If I looked at those stages and I could lay that over my experience, moving from one season to the next. And I think we all can do that. I think that's part of the human experience. I think that's what makes this thing so special, so juicy, and so good. And so yeah, that's been something that has been really powerful for me. Receiving, releasing, all the things. And yeah, so last weekend, it was last weekend, I went up to Lake Winnipesaukee with one of my best friends and her family. And I've known her since Taylor. Her name's Taylor. I've known her since, gosh, you guys, we go back to 7th grade. So in 7th grade, I moved to a new town, and I went to a different school, middle school. So like going to a new middle school, that's a whole different episode. Because middle school, right? Am I right? And she was one of the first people I met there, which was so, oh God, I'm so lucky. I'm so blessed. It was funny because when I got to that new middle school, so first of all, New England, I'll say this, Southern New Hampshire, white, predominantly white. Okay. So like in my elementary schools and middle school experience, I was often the only black woman, the only black kid in my classes, at least one of maybe 4 or 5 black kids in the whole grade. And so that's my life. That's my human experience, right? And so I went to the school. Me and my brother were the only black kids in the school. Maybe there were like 1 or 2 others, but I'm going to say this again, in the school, like in the entire middle school, we were one of a few black kids. So I get there and like, I don't know any of the social dynamics of this new school. And so I remember going into my homeroom, which was the science class. I think her name was Mrs. LaCroix. I can't remember, but if you're listening to this and you went to middle school with me, fact check me. But I think it was Mrs. LaCroix. And she was like, okay, we have a new person in school, Anastasia, stand up. So I like stood up and like awkward, hey, everybody just turning around looking at me because I sat in the back. And she was like, who wants to show her around? And like a few people raised their hand. And I remember one girl raised her hand, and this is like so much shade. There was so much shade in this moment. And I'll protect her name because I don't, want to throw any more shade. But she raised her hand, and she like apparently wasn't the most popular girl in school. I don't know why the teacher answered the way she did, but she looked at this girl who raised her hand first and aggressively and was like, how about Chelsea? Show her around. And I could tell Chelsea was like a little itty bitty, she like, you could tell she was one of the popular girls. She had on whatever, I don't know, Lisa Frank. I don't know what we were doing back then, but so Chelsea showed me around the school, and like, I sat with her at lunch, and she was sitting with all the popular kids, the popular kid table. And it was wild over there. I just remember mostly like watching and observing, not really saying much. But these kids were always talking shit about somebody. These kids were always cracking nasty jokes. Like one girl at this table, I'll also protect her name because her nickname was Savage. Savage. It was so bad. I should just tell you. Oh, this is so bad. Her nickname was Hoary Lori. Ooh. And she was proud of it. She knew people called her that. She would refer to herself as that. Ooh. Anyway, so many dynamics there. But she would write these sex poems. I'm talking graphic, you guys. And she would read them at lunch to the entire table of popular kids. And I just remember sitting at that table maybe for a few weeks and very quickly realizing like these ain't my people. I feel uncomfortable. And I just was very much as a kid, and I'm still like that now, where I'm like, I don't care. Whatever you think people think about you, whatever you feel like you have to just like be yourself. And the facade and the show, I'm like, I don't have time for it. So I just like, I don't know when I met Taylor, but I met her in one of my classes, and we just started, art class. Anyway, she's an incredible artist. And I just started sitting with her and her friends. I remember the day I walked into the lunchroom, and they were like, hey, Stasia, like come sit with us. And I was like, that's okay. I'm going to go sit over here. And that was the last time I ever hung out with those people. Honestly, probably the last time I ever talked to those people. But I loved hanging out with Taylor and our friends. We had a cute little group. And all that to say, Taylor, her and her family have this incredible lake house situation. I say lake house. It's like, honestly, it feels like a campground. There are like maybe 6 or 7 houses on the lake, and all of them, a different aunt and uncle have, and like all the nieces and nephews and cousins, the grandparents have the big house down by the lake, by the water. And then so anyway, I went up to Cabin 5 with Taylor and her fam this past weekend. And there was this moment. Remember how I was talking about like lessons that you learn just by observing? And you may or may not ever communicate those things, but something about a specific moment is magical and it stands out to you. I had a moment like this past weekend. And it led into a larger kind of journaling session that revealed this really cool phrase that I've been saying to myself ever since. And I think it's going to be one of my core phrases. But we were on there. We had 2 party boats. So we like met up in this really cool cove area on Lake Winnipesaukee. And we kind of put the party boats together. And so like there were dogs on the boat. They were, going between the party boats and jumping in the water. And we were like throwing the tennis balls out. The dogs were jumping off and going to get them. And there was this one sweet dog that she loved jumping off the boat and getting the tennis ball. However, she would only, I don't know, sometimes she would do it and sometimes she wouldn't. But anyway, at one point, someone threw the ball in and she was just staring at it in the water, barking over and over. And I could tell she was like so frustrated, like, I don't want to go in the water right now, but I want that ball with everything that I have, but I do not want to jump. I do not want to jump. And so she was just waiting for it to get closer to the boat. So she was like waiting for the wind or the breeze to get this ball closer to the boat. And when it was closer to the boat, she jumped in. And I was like, this is so funny. Like she's waiting for the current to bring her this ball. And also her dad, her owner, would jump in the water too. And whenever he was in the water, she was so down to come in the water, which was precious. Anyway, the lesson that I got from that was like, how many times in our lives do we see something that we want and we see it and we are waiting for it to come to us, but we never know what direction the wind could blow. Like we could see it come toward us and then it could blow in a totally different direction, right? So like relying on that, I don't know, there's a part of it that I was like, what would it look like for us to get in the water, to be like in our lives, to be fully embodied, get in the water, do the things that make us scared, do the things that might seem hard, to be in our human experience and to see the things that we desire around us. And you could take the route of like, oh, I want that. And I hope it comes to me. I hope by chance that it blows my way. Or what would it look like if you got in the water and you decided to change the current of the water itself so that everything you want comes to you? What would that look like? To be so in your power that you're like, sure, I could hope that, the wind blows these things my way, or I can get in the water and change the current so that everything that I want flows to me. So this is me like thinking about this and journaling through this. And I'm like, what would it look like for us to change the current of our lives? It would require us to be so secure in our worth so that anything that we desire, we know if it is for us, it will flow to us. It cannot miss us. There is no version of it where guess it's off going somewhere else to someone else. It's not for me. No, it's like when you get in the water of your life and you do the things that are scary and you jump and you do the things that are hard and you're so fully committed to learning the lessons, to creating the boundaries, to to making space, to releasing the things that aren't like, these are all things to taking aligned action in your life. These are all things that change the current and create a way for the things that you desire to flow to you in one direction. I hope that makes sense. I hope you're getting the spirit of what I felt and what I'm still processing through. But that was one of the lessons from this lake that I received. It's like when you change the current, you change what flows to you. So maybe in relationships, you look around yourself and you're like, man, I don't feel amazing when I'm with the people that I've surrounded myself with for years. I don't feel amazing when I'm in those environments. Or, then what would it look like for you to create the kind of boundaries that keep you in your heart and attract the kind of community and the kind of fellowship and the kind of relationship dynamics that you want, that you deserve? What would it look like if you were so in your worthiness and you were so deeply connected to whatever that is for you, your intuition, that you know that what is for you will flow to you regardless of what changes on the outside, right? Regardless of what's in the news, regardless of anything, you know that what's for you will flow to you. So that's been something that I've really been feeling into and available to receive a different perspective on. And another thing, just in regards to changing the filter through which you view, your life and your choices and, all the things, I've been reassessing my values. I've been asking myself, are the things that I wanted, did I just want them because I was told to want them, or people told me that I should want them, or do I even want them anymore? What is this vision that I have for my life now in this season, and allowing that to change? So one of the things I went through, I've been listening to the To Be Magnetic podcast, and I'm a part of their Pathway membership program, which is so awesome. It's the best $20 a month I've ever spent. And it's been really great. So I went through this whole practice about kind of reassessing and realigning your core values. And they led me through a few different prompts that were so fascinating. One of them was think back to your childhood and the books that you loved to read. What did those books have in common? And, or what characters in TV shows that you love to watch did you resonate with the most? And one of the books that I love to read, and I remember this book so clearly because I think I was in just the school library when I found it. This was in middle school, and it was called Max the Mighty. Max the Mighty, which I should just go ahead and buy this book because it was so powerful for me. It was an expander for me. Before I knew what expanders were, this book was an expander for me. Max the Mighty. And this kid runs away from home, and he meets all of these different characters along his journey, and they're different characters, different, they all are very unique is what I'll say. And they all teach him something new about himself, about life. And I think ultimately Max goes back home and is changed, right? He's different. And I loved that book. It was so short, it was so small, but I love that book so much. So there was that book, and then there was another one, Esperanza Rising. I don't know if anybody has ever heard of this book. If you have, it's probably whoa, blast from the past. That was another book that I loved, and it pretty much was this girl just living freely. She had so much freedom and flow, and that. Those were some of the themes that I kind of pulled from those books. I loved watching X-Men, the cartoon version. Hello, Saturday morning. And I loved Storm. Storm was not only because she's a, woman of color. Hopefully you all know who Storm is, the X-Men. She's this powerful Black woman. She can control the elements, wind, water, lightning, electricity. This sis is amplified. She, in her fullest expression, she's the storm. She's the entire storm. And it's just so amazing. I loved her. She is such an expander for me. So I'm coming up with all these characters and TV shows and books that I love to read, and I'm finding these common themes. And then the activity is like, okay, now I want you to find the themes and then to write them all down. And then to choose 4 of the themes that you resonate with the most, or ones, once you've grouped them together, like come up with the final 4. And so I did that, and I'm looking at this list and I'm like, this is truly at my core, these are the things that are most important to me. And the first one is freedom. Freedom. The second one is creative expression. The third one is intuition and specifically sharing my wisdom and these lessons with others, with the world. Think of it like a sage or a teacher or like that kind of thing, like taking these lessons that I've learned and sharing them with others. And then the last and final is fellowship and community. So those are my 4: freedom, creative expression, intuition, teacher, wisdom, and then community, fellowship. And so it's been really beautiful looking at everything in my life and running it through this filter of like, okay, some of these things might hit all of those. Like, for instance, my business, my brand, my personal brand, my business, it hits all of these values: freedom, creative expression, sharing my wisdom and, my intuition, and community and fellowship. It is all 4 values in one. There are other things like my book, Unleash Your Power, which is the namesake of this podcast, is all about sharing my wisdom and my intuition and, the lessons that I learned with others. It's all about creative expression. It started in a community. I did a whole mastermind, a whole experience, 30 days, sharing intuitive messages with my tribe, with my crew. And so that's how the book even was written. I was sharing these messages with people. And then freedom, like the freedom to be who I am, to move in the world the way that I want to, like all of those things. So, and inspiring you and encouraging you to take that same aligned action in your life. So that's been really healing for me and powerful for me, is coming up with these 4 filters for my life and using everything in my life and running it through that. Excuse me, I just burped. Okay. And so, yeah. And then the final thing, and this is one of my life lessons. So like a little side note. I believe that each one of us comes to this earth to learn. This is school. We're in school, all of us. We're in school always. We come here to learn specific lessons. And they repeat and repeat and repeat till we learn them. Then when we learn them, new lessons come. And so the reason I have this perspective is on one of my birthdays. This most recent birthday I had in October last year. I turned 33. And I love on my birthdays reading old journals and old notebooks, because I've been journaling consistently since I was a kid. I have like one of my first journals my sister's friend gave me when I was like, I don't even know, 7. And it's cute. Maybe one of these episodes I'll just read through it to you. But I was reading through old journals and I had written something on or around my birthday when I was turning 30. And it was all of the lessons that I'd learned in my 20s. And I was reading that entry and thinking to myself, Still learning this, still learning this, still learning this, still learning this. And so many of the things that I learned in my 20s, I'm still learning. And I thought, this can't be just me. Like, this has to be true. If it's true for me, it has to be true for the collective. I think we're all learning certain lessons over and over and over again for whatever reason. Call it karma, call it whatever. But so one of the lessons that I am still learning and will probably always continue to learn is this lesson of speaking up and saying the things that I feel on my heart, my intuition, regardless of what anyone else is going to think or feel or how they're going to interpret it, not being responsible for people's responses to the truth that I share and the stories that I share and the insights that I share. You may disagree with every single thing that I say. I could say something and you may automatically interpret it as, you may take it personally, whatever it is. I have a lot of polarizing thoughts and opinions. I believe that I just move in the world differently, and I think we all do, but I'm further and further, more and more embracing my process, my thought process, my truth, right? The things that I think and believe and have come to learn, not being accepted by everybody. And for some reason, that's really hard for me sometimes. I'm like, I don't want anyone to think that I'm mean. I don't want anyone to think that I'm crazy. I don't want anyone to think that I'm too much. And more, and in this season, I feel myself expanding and opening up in a way that has been so different, and allowing myself to really say what's on my mind, say what's on my heart, say the things in the moment, say them after the moment, right? Say them. So one of the things that I've been telling myself is like, stop sugarcoating shit. Stop sugarcoating shit. Stop sugarcoating it. Say it. It doesn't have to be long. You don't have to keep going on and on and on. Just say the thing. Clarity is kind. And for a long time, I thought clarity and saying things like clearly and saying exactly what I'm thinking. I used to think I have to sugarcoat it. I have to buffer the impact for people. And I actually think that the magic happens when I don't. I think the magic happens when we don't sugarcoat things and we just say it. And I'm going to be clear, don't go around being nasty to people. It's not about that. It's not about being nasty to people. It's not about cutting people down. It's about being your authentic self and allowing yourself in every season to deepen that trust, that self-trust. So, yeah, and then I'm realizing like all the things that I thought would happen, like all of the bad things I thought would happen if I didn't sugarcoat things, I'm realizing now there's more at stake if I don't than I ever realized. So I used to think I have to sugarcoat this because if I don't, this will mean a lost relationship with whoever. This will mean rejection. This will mean something really bad for me. People will think that I'm horrible. They'll say bad things about me behind my back. Like all these things will happen. And that to me seemed like the highest possible consequence. And the stakes felt so high. But I'm realizing now that the stakes are even higher if I'm not myself. The stakes are actually, I have more to lose not being myself than I have to lose if am I saying that? I'm confusing myself. Hello, hopefully you're following along. Authenticity is the move. When we are able to be fully self-expressed and trust ourselves and be whole and feel deeply our worthiness, that's how we change the current in our lives. And that's how the things we really want come to us. When we're fake, when we sugarcoat, when we put the mask on, when we do things just because we think we should or just because they said we should, that's how we get prizes we don't want. That's how the world seems like it's plunged into chaos around us. And we're like, why can't this? Why is nothing working? Why is everything I want going to other people? Why am I stuck in this loop, this hell spiral? And I'm just learning that like, there's more at stake if I don't speak up. If I'm not myself, there's more at stake than rejection. There's a whole life that I could be freaking missing out on if I'm not me. And if I'm not showing up to my human experience, taking the leap, if I'm not in the water, then what kind of life is that? I could look up 10, 20, 30 years from now and be like, I wasted so much freaking time pretending to be someone else wanted me to be instead of being myself. And being ourselves is like, that's where the magic's at. So, I hope you fall deeply, truly, madly in love with who you're created to be. And I hope you allow that love and that light to shine. And I was just on a mentorship call with a dear, dear friend of mine, Zella. And she was telling me, she's like, you are a light, Anastasia. And you are a flame. You're such a bright light. And people come close to you and they feel your warmth. But sometimes some people who aren't ready to feel that warmth, they'll get burned regardless of how bright you're shining. They'll get burned. And they might react. They might respond. They might tell you to dim. They might be like, oh, can you turn it down? It's too bright. And the answer is unequivocally no. No. What's that saying? It's like, oh, am I shining too bright? Wear some glasses. Wear your sunnies. Put them on. So that's kind of the gist. I didn't even read everything that's on this list, but it's close. I can't believe it's been 50 minutes. It's so funny. Right before I put this on, I'm like, yeah, I guess this might be a 10-minute episode. I had no idea where this was going. But I'm so happy that you're here. I love you dearly and immensely. Check the links in the show notes if you want to connect with me. This is June. It is June 4th when I'm recording this. And so tomorrow is Monday and I'm releasing some limited time offers. If you want to get in my world and you want to co-create something together this month, I'm going to be sharing some ways that I can support you in your creative journey. I love you dearly and I'll talk to you soon. Hey friend, thanks for listening. I'm so happy you're here. If this episode helped you in any way, please take a screenshot, share it with a friend, post it to social media, and better yet, why don't you leave me a review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening from? My desire is to activate as many creatives as possible. And if you are looking for additional support on your creative journey, you can always connect with me on Instagram at AnastasiaRJD or visit the links in the show notes. We've got free resources to reignite your creativity and soul-centered ways that we can continue to work together. I'll see you again next week. Same time, same place.